Okay, so welcome to the Python Maven this time meeting. It's in the General Code Mavens meetup group. My name is Gabor Sabo, and I started this group, this Code Mavens group, quite a few years ago with the idea of doing all kind of technological presentations and the meetups, mostly in Tel Aviv, in the neighboring areas. But these days, I try to do everything in English and online in this group, and then I have other groups specifically for local Python and local Rust development or meeting, sorry, not just development. So in this meeting, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Flask web framework that the Python-based Flask web framework, which is one of the most popular web frameworks. There are a couple of others, and some people would probably prefer to do other things. And I might even cover other frameworks later on in other presentations, but for now, we are focusing on Flask. We I used it extensively in various projects, um, but um, but I still don't think that I'm such a huge expert in this thing. So we'll see what kind of things we can do. In the presentation, and I'm going to show you a couple of actually it's relatively small examples how to use Flask to build a small web application, or how to use various tools of Flask. We won't build a project now, I think, or the most would be a calculator, nothing else. I thought about having that I should probably show how to deploy that code, but it wouldn't fit in this 1 hour or an hour and a half or whatever time we'll have now. So we'll have a separate meeting, separate presentation when I'll talk about the deployment of this code. Actually, I think we are going to have a meeting 2 days from now, maybe. I don't remember exactly the date. Let me just actually show this screen and then I can talk about it. So I'm going to share the screen if I manage to do it. Okay. So now you're seeing the website of the meetup group. And so this is the presentation. Oh, I need to remind people, and I always have to remember that to remind people that all these presentations are free, partially because people sponsor me through GitHub sponsors or Patreon or directly through PayPal. So thank you for all the people who do that. That allows me basically to invest some time or to give these presentations. Now, if I go to this to the main page of this one, let me just check it. If it would be responding. So yes, the next one is I think 2 days from now when I'm talking about Linux on Linode. Linode is one of these cloud providers where you can actually get a machine for I think $5 a month. But you can pay by the hour also, so it's very good for experiments as well. But also, if you'd like to have a whole machine, small but whole machine, Linux machine, then $5 is rather cheap to per month is rather cheap, and you can deploy there, for example, your Flask-based application if that's what you would like to do. So you would be welcome to that meeting as well. About this Flask, oh, one more thing about myself, a few things. So I've been programming for about 40 years, teaching programming for some 25 or so years. And so I'm self-employed, teaching both programming. I used to teach Perl, Python these days, and Rust, and also help companies improving their development process. Usually is Git, introducing test automation to the companies, and also setting up CI. So these are the stuff I do. Now I have this Git repository here, and I'm going to put the link into the chat room so you can also access it immediately. And I'm going to use this repository to have all the code that I'm writing, and it's automatically committed. So I'm not going to bother with the commits. It will be automatically committed and pushed out as I'm writing with a delay of like 2 minutes. So you can follow the code there. And we're going to talk about Flask. So this is just the website of Flask, the Flask framework. It's a very nice, relatively simple framework that we can get started quite easily. And then one more link I think I can put here, if I find it, right? Yes, just a second. So here, these are the slides that I use usually when I'm teaching. So they have these two teaching modes. One of them is when I prepare slides up front and I'm going through them, and the other one is when I'm trying to live code things. It's public, so you can access to it. And hopefully, I got into the first, not this one of the pages. So here, probably you have these links, or surely you have these links. And if I click on that link, you can actually get to the source code of each example. So you can copy them in case you are interested, not from the web page, but directly from a Git repository where you can have all the examples. So it will make you, it will be easier to do that. I'm going to talk about Flask primarily, which is the web framework, but there's also Jinja. Jinja is the template system that's there, and there's a third library or Python module in the play, which is called Werkzeug. That's not that interesting at this point. The most interesting parts are going to be Flask and a little bit of Jinja. So in order to get started, let me try to get to my terminal. I'm going to set up a virtual environment, virtual env -p Python 3 in the venv folder. And hopefully this folder is already in the git ignore, so it won't be committed to the repository. And by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat, or if you prefer, you just open your mic and ask a question anytime. Just feel free. Just remember that we are recording it and it will be published on YouTube. So if you don't want your voice to be there, that's then right. Okay, so we have the environment set up, and I activated, and I need to install pip. Actually, let me write it this way. Requirements.txt. So let me create a requirements file and just put in Flask. So we'll have that, and then I pip install -r the requirements file, and that way we are going to. You don't have to sort of remember, or I don't have to remember what I need to install. So as you can see, this installed Flask, this Werkzeug, Jinja 2 actually, and a couple of other libraries that were needed there. And now we need to, okay, so this is the basics, okay, the setting up. Now I need to create an application, and for that I was thinking about using Visual Studio Code, and maybe I will switch to it, but I write way too much in Python. So I'm going to use Vim. There's a question, why you build virtual env? Why do I use virtual env? I mean, it's a generic, not specific to Flask, but there are a couple of ways to make a separation of project dependencies. So if I have two projects, both of them using Flask, let's say, and one of them using version 2 and the other one needs version 3, then I would like to make it easy to install in one project, for one project version 2 and the other project version 3. So each one can have their own virtual environment, and in each virtual environment I can install the different version of Flask in that case. And there are other solutions. So virtual environment is just one of them that I'm using, and it's basically having a folder and everything goes into that folder. So if I ask where Python is, it says it's in this. So we are in the work web application with Flask folder. So this is our location, okay? And Python itself is now in this folder. So it creates a separation of dependencies between projects, which allows me to use the different versions of the same project in different projects. So that's the main reason I'm using. Okay, so let's go on. And I wanted to create this application. And for that, I'm using this from Flask import Flask. Okay, that's not much. Then I'm creating an application which looks like this, Flask. And then I need to give it a name. And sort of the default or recommended thing is just to use this underscore name thing, which basically is just the name of your file, okay, or your application. And then we need to write, so this is sort of the setup. And then we need to start implementing routing, okay? Now let me show you a little bit what I'm talking about. If we go to this website, for example, okay, and you see the URL, the address here at the top. And the address, what you can see is there's the website, the codemaven.com in this case. And then after that, there's a slash and slides and slash and Python and so on. So what we are interested in is all the part that after the first slash, including the first slash. The actual host name, codemaven.com, is not really relevant for the Flask application, only the what comes after. And what the application needs to do is map, and basically every web application needs to do, is map each of these possible paths of the addresses to a function in the application that will deal with that request. So when the browser sends in, a user sends in this request, this URL, this address, then a specific one function will run. And this whole, one big part of these frameworks is the mapping of how do we map the various addresses onto various functions basically in Python. So what we need to put here is to define a function. And okay, where is my editor? I lost my editor. Okay, no. Okay, so I'm creating a function and let's call it main. Doesn't really matter the name of the function. And this function will return just hello world. Okay, hello world. Nothing really interesting. It's just returning a string. And now the question, how can we connect this to a path? And this is using a decorator. I'm using this variable, which can be anything basically, but quite customary to use the word app. And then I say route, and I write here the address, the path from the website, from the beginning of the website. And basically, this is, if everything worked fine, if I didn't make any typo, then this is the first web application that we can run. So let me just keep the editor, and I open the separate window. And in this window, I'm going to run this program. So the way I run this is I tell it Flask up, the name of the application, which is up inside that file. I'm also turning on Flask debug. So these are two environment variables that I set. And then I run Flask run. So there is a Flask command that was installed when I installed Flask. And no, sorry. It can't find. Why does it not find it? Because in this window, I didn't start the virtual environment. So if I write in which Python, it will say that there is no Python on my system. Basically, it doesn't find it. So I need to also enable the virtual environment in this window. And now I can run which Python. It finds Python. I can also run which Flask. It finds Flask. So, and now I can run this command. And it didn't like me. Why? Okay. Because I don't know why.
The parenthesis, no?
No.
No,
I
no,
don't even
return.
see the file. Okay. I know because the reason, okay, so if I go back to this window, when I tried to run it, it couldn't run it. Then I run ls or ll, and the file didn't exist because I was so clever that I forgot to save the file. Okay, so I that's a very, very common mistake. Okay, now it works. Okay, so basically I forgot to save the file, and yeah, it's very funny. Basically every time I teach a course, basic introduction of Python or whatever, there will be people who edit a file and then they start to run a different file. So it's a similar thing that what I did. And they keep editing one file and running a different file and they don't understand what happens. And I mean, it doesn't happen only to beginners. It happens to, as you can see, people with 40 years of experience, but it's fun. Okay, so we started this, and I'm going to explain these two in a bit. But before that, I do that, I show you this slide here. Okay, so this is I'm going to paste this slide as well, this URL where we have actually this explanation, the thing. So I used this way of running it. I could have also run this way when either on Linux or Mac. So I could set up with export these two environments very well, and then run Flask run. On Windows, to my best knowledge, you can't run this way. You need to first define these environment variables using the set keyword, so slightly different than from Linux and Mac. You define them this way, and then you run Flask run. So this is on Windows. In case that's your environment, I am running on Linux. So what happened here is this started a web server internally on my computer, and it's not even accessible from the outside world. It basically tells me it's running on the local host. So the 127.0.0.1 is the local host, my own computer, and on port 500. So I can go to my browser and type in either, it's enough to type in localhost, and it needs to type in 500. Okay, I could have used, so let me just show this one, 127.0.0.1, that would be the same, okay? And let me enlarge here the fonts. I just usually type in localhost because it's easier to type than all these dots. And that would be the same. So localhost is being translated into this address, the 127.0.0.1 address. Okay, so now I missed my browser. I visited my own web server. So this is just a second. Someone now asks, how do I set up my development environment? I'm newbie to Flask and Python. Okay, I'll try to answer that, though I think I'm trying to cover that mostly, but maybe a few steps before is missing. So this one now, my browsers visited the website, which is hosted on my computer. Just as earlier, just as if you type in google.com, or in my case, I use DuckDuckGo as my search engine. But if you go to type in some address, then your browser or my browser visits that website. The web server does some job and returns some HTML page. Okay. Actually, you probably are familiar with that. You can click on view page source, and then you can see more or less the HTML behind the scenes. Okay, the same happens now here locally on my computer, but if I click view source, then I will just see the same text because my HTML is so simple that it only contains the text. And now let me try to answer a little bit to this question, how do I set up my development environment? Well, you need to install Python. Okay, you go to python.org and you download Python and install it. And then what I showed you that can be done so on Linux you would install it with apt-get or yum Python, so you'll have installed. On Windows you would install it from python.org. Let me just go there, python.org, this one, and there is some downloads, and then you download Python from there. On Mac, I guess you would do the same. There are a couple of ways to do this, but that would be one of the ways. And then, so that's installing Python, then setting up the virtual environment as I did earlier. So you can, if you weren't here when I started, then you can watch it on the video again later on. You set up the virtual environment, install the requirements, which is just Flask in this case, and that's it. Now, if you're not familiar with Vim assignments, you could use any text editor, basically. You could use Notepad++, which is a nice editor, or you can use Visual Studio Code. So maybe I'll use Visual Studio Code in the next example. I quit the Vim, so I'm going to try to use Visual Studio Code. Before that, let me show you again the Git repository. So I'm reloading it. This is still showing the one that was before the presentation started. I'm reloading it, and you can see, first of all, you can see the app py that I added and the requirements py txt, and you can also see this one. This is my mistake. This folder should be also excluded. So I'm going to git remove this folder. I think you can do this. No, I need to run git -r, and I need to use the force. Okay, so I think that's it. And now I need to add it to git ignore pycache. Okay. Hopefully, it's going to go away now. Remove generated file. Let me see. Okay, I removed that folder, and I don't need to add this git ignore anymore because it will be added automatically. The whole point is to let me explain this. So this pycache, in case you're not familiar with this is where various or compiled versions or sort of compiled versions of my code live. So this is the uppy converted into some bytecode or intermediate code, let's say. And because it's a generated thing, we don't need to add it to Git. And I forgot when I created the git ignore file, I forgot to add this folder into the git ignore file. So my auto commit added it. Now, if I reload this page, then you will see it's gone now. Okay, and everything is up to date. So that's basically it. Let me start doing it further. Okay, back to this page. Sorry for the looking at other pages a little bit. So what you should see is where I ran the Flask application. I said Flask run here, and it's running, and it printed out some output at the beginning. That was before I started to access the web page, and then it started to print out the logs of my access. So now let me press the enter a few times, and if I go and visit the page again and reload it, Control R, I'm reloading it, you can see a new line was added because I visited this page again. And here you can see, so this basically says that someone from this address, so from the same computer, accessed this address, this path. Now you can also see this favicon ICO. This is basically the file that you would see, these icons, these little icons. This is the favicon, and the browser automatically requests that file, but I don't have it on this application. I could add it, but I don't want to bother with that. So what you can see is that this is the response, which is 404 file not found. You are probably familiar with it. Let me see what happens if I do something like this. Now, I try to access a page called hello. Okay, what do I get? I got back this error message, not found. At the top, you might see, I don't know, it's a little bit small, but you might see it says 404 not found. This is the infamous 404 error when you visit a page and it can't be found, this is the error message that the web server sends you. And if I go visit the log file, you can see that this is the request. The request got in, hello, and the response was 404. To the other one, to the slash, the response was 200, which means it was successful. Okay? So this way you can understand what's going on with your application during development. Now, there's some few more things that you can see here. One of them is this warning. This is a development server. Do not use it for production. Indeed, Flask provides you this development server to make it easy to locally develop. But there are other ways, much better ways to these WSGI servers that you can use for production. So that's one thing. Another thing that here is interesting that I used here. So this one told Flask basically the name of the application, which is also, I think, the default, but I think it's better to explicitly say here. And Flask debug equal 1 basically turns on debug mode, which means that the error messages are sort of going to be nicer. And also it means that the application is automatically reloaded when something is changed. And this actually happened here when it reloaded the application. But let me show you now what is really interesting. So I'm going to start now the Visual Studio Code, which opened in a different terminal. So I hope that it will work out well. Okay. So I'm opening the app.py. So far it's good. And I can change it. Let's say I'm changing this one to send out some HTML. So now I'm including some HTML. And that's it. So I edited this code. Now I can go to this terminal, and in this terminal, I can see already that it says detected a change in the application reloading. Actually, so what happened? Okay, just it's unclear. My editor is set, my Visual Studio Code editor is set to be automatically saving files. So even though I didn't press save, it actually saved the file, and apparently it saved it twice while I was talking. And when Flask noticed that something changed in this file, then it reloaded the application. So I can now switch to the web server and not this page, the main page. There's only the main page. And I reload, and then you can see that this one is now in bold because I put them in these HTML marks which say bold. And if I click on view source, then you will see, if I enlarge it, then this is indeed what I sent. Okay, so this is the source code of the HTML. It is the HTML source code, and this is what the web server displays. Okay, so far we have the first application, first web application, right? And maybe, so now that I switched to Visual Studio Code, maybe we would like to switch this also there, so I won't have to switch between windows. So I stop this application now using Control-C. You can't see my hands, but I can press Control-C, and then this stopped the web application that I ran here. In order to, I can copy-paste this one now, and hopefully this will make it easier for you to follow. So I'm opening the terminal here, maybe not, because I have some issues with I need to source. Do I need now? Which Python? No, it's already, because I started it in a virtual environment. It doesn't need anything. I'm not sure if it's a good idea here because the font is too big, but I'm going to start the application here now. So while I'm editing, you will be able to also see what's going on in the terminal. So this is the first application. The couple of issues, one of them is that it's a very static thing. It just returns hello world and nothing else, nothing dynamic, no response to the user. So we'll have to handle it. Another thing is, which is very important in my view, is that we don't have a test to verify that this code indeed works. So the next thing we are going to do is to write a test. And this is I don't think in most places, in most tutorials or whatever videos that I saw, I usually see people just running, trying to run fast and writing some application and introducing the code without actually writing tests. But I think a much better way is to write tests. So I'm creating a new file, if I know how to create new files. Okay, Control N, sorry, wrong thing. And I'm going to write a test file. So a test file is something like test.app.py. Okay, it's in the same folder. Okay, what do I need? I need to import the application, which is the app.py. And then I need to create a function. And as you can see, while I'm writing this, the Flask keeps reloading it because it's the same folder and it thinks sort of that something changed. Well, it sees something's changing because the file is changing. But it's a little unnecessary at this point, but it's fine. Okay, nothing really happens. So I'm writing now a test function because I'm going to use PyTest to run this. And the PyTest, as in other test frameworks, basically, they expect that the test file will be called test something, so test underscore something, and there will be functions which are also called test underscore something. And they don't have to be up, okay? It's just because I don't have a better imagination to give you better names. You can, okay, let's call it kukuriku. That's another word that I often use. Okay, so just to show you that it doesn't matter what goes after the test. And then I create a web, I basically start the web application or sort of start the web application equal to app. So this application, and inside there is the app variable. If you recall, inside the app file, there is a variable called app. So this is this one. And then I can call a function called test client. Test client. Okay, there might be other ways. I'm using this one. So what happens is, how can you test basically the web application? One way is to start the web application and from some external thing and visit the browser and check with your browser. Other way is start your web application and run some code that will visit your browser and check the output. The way we are doing is a third way, is we are pretending as if the web server was running. Actually, in order to show you, I'm going to turn this on off now. So you will see that we don't need the actual Flask web server to be running. So I turn this off. I go to the web application. If I find the right window, I reload it, and it says unable to connect, right? Because the web application is not working. The web server is not working. So I'm just showing like a good magician that the box is empty, okay? But here we have this variable web, which is basically a representation of that web application. And now I can send in requests. So I'm going to send in what we call a get request to this slash, to the slash pass. And this will get a response, which we can put into response, let's say. Usually they call it RV from whatever, but doesn't really matter. Yeah, there is a question, so I'm going to read that now. If you have a minute at the end, can you please touch base on the advantage of Flask over its counterparts in the market, Fast API, Brighton, Streamlight, and so on? Thanks. Short answer, that I can't, because I know Fast API to some level, less than Flask, and I'm not familiar with the other ones. So for me, the main advantage of Flask is that I know it and I don't know the others. Flask is probably the longest living or longest existing one with lots of plugins or whatever extensions. So probably that's one of the advantages. As I understand, I haven't tried it. Fast API is faster. And it's more, what I know about it, it's more focused on writing APIs, while Flask and what I'm showing right now actually is creating web applications that return HTML pages. as opposed to APIs where you have a front end. So basically, that's my answer to this question. But I really, really thank you for listing this the counterparts because that you think are important because I would like to review them and maybe create different presentations for those. So getting back to this. So this one sent in a request to the web server and received a response. And this response, oh, I'm going to use this RV even though because it's shorter and I'm lazy to type in. So this RV has various attributes. One of them is the status. And the status is this 200 or status code actually you can even use. This is that 200 or 404 or whatever number. So I'm expecting now that this page will return a 200. So I can ask it assert and then should be equal to 200. Okay, let's see if this works. How do I run it? I run PyTest, but I don't have PyTest. So I need to, and now I'm going to just go back to Vim. I add PyTest to the requirements and pip install -r requirements. As you can see, I do a lot of things on the command line, on the terminal, because I'm very used to it. Other people who are more familiar with some editor and IDE probably will do many of these things from there. But I'm not that familiar with those, so I'm doing a lot of things from the command line. So here I installed now PyTest, and I can run PyTest now. And to do a quick explanation, in these cases, we don't call ourselves the tests. We just define the test functions and let PyTest call them. And basically, this one tells me that there was one test file. There is this dot says that there was one test function, this test kukuriku. It doesn't say the name, but this is the one. And the fact that it's a dot, a green dot, nothing else, means that it passed. Okay, so it was indeed 200. Fine. Let's write another. So let me rename it. Sorry, test up. Let's write another one. Test missing page. Just so to see what happens if we are trying to access a missing page. So remember, if we access this hello page, we will get back 404. Now, what if I actually are expecting 200 and not 404? Incorrectly, but I'm expecting something else. And I run PyTest. Uh-oh. A lot of red things. Okay, what do I get here? I get the test file name and I get the dot, which means that there was one test function that passed. This is the same one that we saw earlier. And the capital and red F that says that there's another test function, and in this case, the test missing page, that failed. And then it gives you the explanation. There was an assertion where the left-hand side was 404 and the right-hand side was 200. And if I go and look at it, it says, okay, the actual status code was 404 and I expected 200. Now, in this case, it's not a bug, okay? It's a wrong expectation. So it's not a bug in the application, it's a bug in the test because my expectation is incorrect. But I can fix that, okay? And now my expectation is 404, and I run PyTest, and now I get 2 green dots, meaning 2 test functions, and they are all passing. Brilliant. And 40 minutes into, and I'm only writing my first test, I really need to improve the speed here or maybe skip all the other things. So this is not the only thing I would like to test, of course, not just the return code. I also would like to test the actual response. And for that, there is the RV, and I can ask for the data. RV actually HTML. Is there an HTML? No, text. Maybe there is an RV text. Assert. And so here is what I do often. I say, okay, I don't really know what should be the result. I mean, I could know because this should be the result, right? But let's say you don't, oh, I can't copy paste here. Okay, this should be the result. But let's say you don't really know it or you don't want to copy paste from there. So what I do is say, okay, let's assume that the text is that I'm expecting empty, and I run the PyTest, and it will fail, obviously, because I don't get an empty string, and it will tell me that it was expecting on one hand side, on left hand side there is this text, and on the right hand side there is an empty string. So instead of that, now I can put here this one. This is my expectation. And here it is. Now I have a test that can verify that my web application returns whatever I wanted. Okay, let's do a little improvement here. Okay, and make some more changes. I would like to, so far it's very static. Let's add a new route here, okay? A new route that will return the time. So I'm going to call it time because why not? And how can I generate the time? I can import the time function, the time module of Python, and return. What do I return? I take time.time, and I think I need to convert it to string, but I'm not sure. So let's try to run this. So I need to run this Flask up, Flask, this one. And it complains. Okay, why does it complain? Oh, why does it complain, anyone? View function mapping is overwriting an existing endpoint function main. So what happened is that I copy-pasted this and forgot to rename it. Okay, so let's call it show time, because I can't use the time name because then it would be overriding basically this one. So I needed to rename the function. Okay, let's run this again. Okay, so it's waiting for me. I can go to this website. First of all, if I reload this, now the hello world works. And if at the top I'm typing in /time, it will give me a type error. Now this is what you can see is the reason you can see this detailed error message is because we are in debug mode. Let me try to show you the other one. So I stop this. I set the debug mode to 0. And I reload the page. And now I get this internal server error, which is what you want in production, right? In production, you don't want to show your client. I mean, no, you don't want this either in production. But if you have to choose between this and the one that we saw earlier, okay, so let me show this one again. So between that internal error or this detailed report, you probably prefer the first one, the one that is without the details, because you don't want your visitors to see all these details on you about your application. Ideally, you wouldn't never return an internal server error, of course. And there are tools to avoid that, of course. But that's the one of the points. Now, why did this happen? And we can go over it, but basically it also tells us it's a type error. So what I mentioned that I wasn't sure, apparently, we need to convert it into a string. So I can call str, and now it returns a string. It's not just a number. It automatically reloaded here, and I can reload here, so it's not automatic. And here you can see the time. Now, if I reload, I don't touch the application anymore. I'm just reloading it. And as you can see, on every request, I get back the current time every time. Nice. Any questions? While I'm trying to think about the next thing. So the next thing would be, I don't give you time for questions, right? The next thing would be ideally to check if the time page responds. But I'm going to skip that now because it's basically the idea, because I would like to make a little bit more progress on other things. The idea here is that you can't really compare it to some expected value, because every time you request the time it will be different. And this will happen in lot in your applications. So what can you do? I would probably use a regular expression to verify that whatever I got back looks like a number, or looks like a time, sorry, looks like a time stamp, okay? Maybe I would use less than and greater than, so it will be inside some range in case of this number. But you have to be thinking of how can you verify something that changes all the time, and maybe you don't have control. There's also mocking. I could mock the time, and oh, actually, I'm going to have such a meeting as well about mocking. So in Python, so you can we can discuss that as well. Okay, so let's do the next thing, and maybe I won't be able to go too much further, but I'll try to do this. So I'm going to create an address here. Yeah, okay, let's switch this to single quotes. So here inside I can use double quotes. So this one, what I just added here is echo, is a link. And I can also put here the time, okay? Let me put this the time as well. So you will be able to access it easily. Okay, what happens now? If I go back to the main page of this website, so without address, we have a link to this time thing, and we have a link to this echo, which is not found because I haven't implemented it yet, but it's the /echo path. And what I wanted to show you here is how can you create an application that accepts data and returns, accepts data from the user and then does something with it and then returns it. So I'm going to implement this echo function. And I'm going to call it echo here. Okay, I don't forget to rename the function. And the mapping echo. So you can see I created mapping for the slash, for the time, for the echo. Later on, you will be able to create more flexible mapping. So you won't have to map every page that exists for every user ID and so on. You will be able to say, okay, under user slash an ID, that goes to the same function. But for now, we need to implement everything. So here I'm going to return an HTML template. And for that, I need triple quotes because it will be multi-line already. Maybe here I could use also triple quotes, but whatever. So I need to create a form. A form looks like this in HTML. Form. I can't type. I say input. Name whatever text, let's call it, and another so let's see what happens now. Okay, if I reload this is what an input box looks like. So of the form you don't really see because it's around it. This is the input box, but we don't have a button yet, so we need to add the button, which is called input. Also type submit, and then so far that's a button. I can reload it, and now it says automatically submit query. And I think you have put it value, and I say, let's say echo. And now if I reload it, then the text on the button is echo. So I created this form. I can type in something, hello, and I click on the echo. Now I clicked on the echo. I don't know if you can see here at the top, you can see also echo question mark and then text equal hello. So whatever I typed in here was sent to the server with, you know what? I'm going to paste it here where you can see it better. So this is the address. No, wrong comment. Okay, this is what happens in the address bar when I type in hello in this field. Now let's try something else. I type in hello world, exclamation mark, echo, and I'm going to copy this one so you can see it easier here. As you can see, the space was replaced by the plus sign. The exclamation mark was replaced by this percentage 21. This is what we call HTTP escape sequences. And so this was part of what was sent to the application. Now, how can we access this information? Because this was sent back to the same path, the same /echo path where we displayed this page. So how can our application receive this information? Because so far, what happened is that the user in the browser typed in something, and it was sent to the server, and the server disregarded it. So I can here say, first of all, I need to import something. I need to import another thing called request. And then I can come here and say request. So this is the object that represents whatever the user sent in as a request. And this has arguments. And from this is basically a dictionary. Okay. And actually, I think that's it. Logger info. Let's try to do this one. Let's see what happens. Okay. So I added something. I can reload the page. That's the same as typing in and echoing. And so now this is what I got here. I got here this line, this info. But first of all, actually, it's in the wrong order or whatever. I got this one, where you can see that this was the request that the user, meaning me, sent in. This is just the regular logging of Flask. But I also added this extra logging, the uplogger info, that logged here whatever is in this request.args. And as you can see, this is an immutable multi-dict, whatever it is, with a key called text and the value, the hello world. So I can get this information now. I can copy paste this one, and either say, okay, text, and this is how I get out the value. But this is sort of problematic, because if when the user visited the page first time, there was no text. So that would raise an exception, right? So it would be better to call get and pass in the name of the field. And this is how I get the text from the user. Okay? This is the user text or whatever text. And then I can include this here. Let's say, well, actually, we can say this one. If text, then return you said and the text. And I need to put an F in order for this to be an F string. Okay. What is this now? We get from the user this text. If it's true, okay, meaning if there is some content in there, if it's not none, it's not an empty string, then we will return this text which says you said and the text itself. So now if I type in hello and press echo, it says you said hello and doesn't show you the someone is leaving and asks where is the recording. I will put the link to the recording on the meetup page. And also there is because we are talking about Python, let me show you Python code Mavens. So this is a relatively new version of the site. You can see it. I put the link here. This is where I'm going to publish all the videos as well with notes. Okay, I put the link there. Okay, where was I? Sorry. Right. So what we have here is that if the user sends in a request without text, then this is going to be false. This will not happen, and the form will be shown. If the user sends in some text, then this will be shown. And so if I go back to the beginning of the website, okay, first page, click on echo. I got here without parameters. I type in the parameters. Actually, I don't need to type in here. If I know what I'm doing, I can type in here text equal kukuriku. I don't know, probably you can't see it. And that's it, right? So I don't really need that form. But the form, most users will need this form and say, hi, Python, and then click on the link, and then you will get back this text. Now, of course, you could also change this. You could say, okay, instead of this one, let me put it here. Let me create a string, okay? So this is the HTML, let's say. We start with empty HTML. If there is text, then the HTML plus equal this text. Let me also put here bold, okay? So it will be stand out. And I also put in a horizontal row here. And then I also add this. And then, okay, that's a return. And here I can put here the HTML. Now, you know what? Not that. I prefer something else. I say this HTML equal to the HTML plus this string. And then now we have something that I called HTML, and I can return it, HTML. Okay, so what I did here now, I started with an empty string. I built up this response, and this is what I'm sending back. So if I go back to the first page now, just a second, I'll answer that one. So here you can hear this one. I go to the echo. I don't see the response here. I type in hello, click on echo, and it didn't work because I didn't write it correctly. It should be plus equal. Okay. So if I reload this, now this is the right one. Okay, so let me go back to the beginning. I reload this one, echo, there's nothing there. I type in hello world with an exclamation mark, echo, and now you can see that I get back the response and also the form. So the user can keep playing with this, okay? If that's what you like, okay? You see, I had two different solutions in different ways. Okay, now there's a question if there is a way to mask hide your source code from the client. So no, I mean, obviously the Python code that you have is on the server, the client can't see it. But the view page source, you can't hide it. There were or are what you can, I mean, so the HTML you can't hide really, because that's what goes to the client. And there's not much point either hiding this. There were some clever people that used to do this. How is it? How can I say this? Backslash n times 100, I think that would work. Let me try this. Hi. View source. Empty, right? But in reality, it's here at the bottom. Okay, so I remember old times when people were doing this, and many people were saying, "Oh, the source code is empty. Someone has hidden it." And no, they were just putting a lot of new lines there, and so most people, or some people didn't scroll down and didn't see that it's actually there. You can minimize the HTML, but then you can convert it back. So there's not much point in it. Okay, so this let me keep this HTML trick here just for so you can find it amusing. Okay, and I won't have time for. Okay, it's 1 hour. Okay, let me find the next thing I wanted to show. So I really wanted to show here testing and what we call post request, but I don't have time for that now. So instead of that, what I'm going to do is showing you the Jinja template system. And why is it important for me to show that? I mean, for basically with this knowledge that you have here already, you can already build whatever web application you write, more or less. Okay, there are many other features, of course. We could spend. I think my full plus course is three times 8 hours or 4 times 8 hours of presentation and practice. So let's say, I don't know, 10 or maybe 20 hours of, well, no, something like 10, 15 hours of presentation. And now we are about 1 hour. And that's sort of the basic Flask course. So just to, that there is more to learn, but a lot more to learn. But you can also already build a lot of things with this. Of course, here maybe in the code here, you might need to access some database and look up the data. So you got from request from the user, and then you can look up some response in a database and send back that and so on. But the most problematic part of so far what we saw is that the HTML is here embedded into this in the source code, and it makes it extremely old school. This was in the 90s. That's how it was working, and it's also very difficult for editing because probably you are not the expert in HTML editing and generation and making nice pages. You are a Python expert, or at least there are two different types of people. One of them can build nice HTML pages, and one can build the Python source code. Usually they are separate. So we would like to also separate the HTML from the Python source code, and that's where the various template systems come in. So in order to use the template system, we also need to add here render template. Okay, and I'm going to what shall I do here? Well, I can copy paste this now and comment out one of them. Okay, so I'm going to comment out this one. So we will have it in the version control, but I can just implement the same thing here. So what we need here is this render template, and then we can here we can return the render template and give it the name of the template file. Let's call it echo.html. So this is going to the template file. In order to use, we also need to create a template file. And for that, I need to, I don't know how to create folders here. Okay, I need to create a folder. Sorry, I can't see this. You can't see this either. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop this. I'm creating a templates folder. Okay, so I need the template folder. And in this folder, I'm going to create this echo.html file. So now I create a new file, which is going to be, where is this? I'm going to take this form and put it in the file and save this into the templates, and I call this echo HTML. So this is basically a snippet of an HTML. It's not a whole HTML, but this is what an HTML looks like. So I don't need this one anymore. And for now, I can comment out these ones as well. Okay, let's see how this works. I start the application again and visit the page. So if I visit the page without any parameters, the main page, echo, now I got back the same page. I can also type into the echo, let's put here H1 echo, okay? So we'll see that this is coming from here. Now this was already saved. I can come here, reload it, and you can see this is a title. H1 is a title, capital letters, big letters, sorry. Fine. So this is now showing the form. And now comes the interesting part. Well, this is not this one, the HTML, and not this one. We need to send in to this template. Somehow we need to send in the data that we need. And in order to send this in, well, basically in the template, I can use which one shall I use? Let's do this for now. I can use the text variable. So first I put here this horizontal row that we had there, and we put the text variable here. Okay. And now we are sending into the text variable the text value. Okay, way too many times text, right? So this is, let's call text from user. This is the text from user, okay, just to clarify. So this is the variable that arrived from the user. And we are passing into this template to the text attribute or variable of this echo of this template, the value text from user. Now, if I reload the page, it says none because the text has none. We'll fix that in a bit. If I type in hello with one L, that's fine. Now I got back the text. So I get back the text exactly as I wanted, but there is this problem with the none. And because this conditional, we didn't have the conditional there. So what you can see here is that we got some input from the user. We could, if this was a real application, we could here at this point look up some information from the database, get back information from the database, and then pass in that information into the template. And that's how we return something, okay? So now I'm showing the simple version. Here comes the business logic, okay? But we don't have business logic now. Okay, so how can we include this if statement and the use said part and all this into that code, into that template? In the template, I can say this one and say if text. So this way I can embed conditionals into the template. And then I put the use said. And I need the double. So inside Python, there's a single pair of curly braces. Inside Jinja, we have with double curly braces. And I need to end it with and if. Okay, you don't need this indentation. Okay, so I indented here. It's only easier for me to read this code. So let's go back to the beginning again. Click on echo. Now you can see that the horizontal row also disappeared because we didn't pass in any value in the text, so nothing is shown. Now I type in hello, and now we have the you send hello and this line and get back the form as well. So now what we managed to do is I can also get rid of all these comments here. So instead of what we had here, that we build up our HTML inside the code, instead of that, we did this computation, whatever, and then they passed in the data into the template system. And in the template system, it's basically a simple language, simple sort of programming language. It doesn't well, it's a templating language, so it has if statements, as you can see. It has for loops. It has a few other things. It has variables like this, so it can deal with basically everything you would like to display in any interesting way. Okay, so now that's even more of the basics you have. The best, of course, is to keep everything in separate templates. And I think I'm going to finish at this point because, well, it's more than an hour now, and I'm sure you're tired as well. Let me show you something before we also finish. So on the CodeMaven's website, there is skeletons, HTML skeletons, for example, plain HTML file skeleton. So this would be the basic of the HTML page, beginning and end of the HTML, because right now we have just the internal parts in that template. There is also Bootstrap with its skeleton, but it's rather old, and a couple of other things. Here's a minimal example generating HTML with Python Jinja. Nice. Okay, so that's another article. Let me put this one here as well. I personally use Bulma in many of my applications. Bulma IO, I think this is. So this is a CSS and HTML framework that allows you to create much nicer pages, and allows you, because if you look at my web pages, they are not really nice. So beyond allowing, you actually have to have some capabilities of building nice web pages. I don't have that one. But you can use these frameworks, for example, this one or Bootstrap, or there are quite a few of these that will allow you to instead of having these where is it, rather ugly whitish page, you can create something much nicer. So I think that's it for today and for this meeting. I guess I'm going to have further meetings continuing from this point, and maybe also assuming knowledge, sort of basic knowledge, and building an application as much as we can in an hour or an hour now, or 15 minutes. Really can't do much more. Thank you for being here. Whoever watched the video, please thumbs up on the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, come to the Code Mavens meetup group and subscribe there, and see you at one of our next meetings. Bye bye.